Hey, what's going on, everybody? In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down my Week 4 power rankings. Of course, this is from the Week 3 results, as we played 3 games of the season going into Week 4. So far, it doesn't look like there are that many changes for this current week. I'm going to have a lot more changes probably after next week. We got a good amount of games next week, or very good slate. But this week, we had a lot of teams that were much clearly better than other teams, so I'm not going to knock teams for games that they should have lost. But we do have some big movers. We do have some little movers, and we've got all that in between. In this video, it's probably gonna be a lot shorter than it has been for the other couple of power rankings videos, as have gone 40 plus minutes. I'm gonna try to keep this video under 30 minutes as we break down these teams a lot quicker as we know more about them. So for the Chicago Bears, they're obviously the worst team in the league. Nothing much to say about them. Justin Fields is not. He's just not playing well. The offense is playing horrible. The coaching is not there. The defense gets put routinely 30 up on them. And so they're the worst team in the NFL. Can they become the number one overall pick? It's very possible. Denver Broncos, I'm going to have it at 31. They obviously got put up 70. I mean, even if we're basing it off of the first half, they get put up 30 in the first half, man. Every unit looked horrible outside of the offense was doing some good things in the first half. In the second half, game was over already by then. But the Denver Broncos advanced to 0-3 in the season, even with Sean Payton at head coach and moving there. Really hasn't helped the team at all. In the big picture, maybe the offense has gotten a little better, but the defense has just sloped down. And the defensive coordinator, he's gonna get blamed for it, but I mean, like, look at last year. I mean, the defense was so much better last year, and now this year it's not. Maybe because they're playing tougher opponents. Carolina Panthers, I'm gonna have at 30. They're also, a struggling offense. Outside of last game they put up 27 points. Decided it is a bad defense with the Seattle Seahawks. However, Bryce Young, number one overall pick, he's not looking great. And the defense, man, you almost got to put up 40 by the Seahawks, and the defense is going to lose them so many games this year. I had them at 30. The Las Vegas Raiders are going to have a 29. The coaching is the main issue with them, and then there's big holes in certain areas of the team that are just holding it back so much from its potential. A good example is like coaching with Josh McDaniel. They went for it on 4th and 8 instead of going for the touchdown, which was what should have been done. The secondary is Swiss cheese. I've never really seen a secondary like this picked apart by a I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Steelers have a terrible passing offense, and they were picked apart pretty easily by Kenny Pickett. Calvin Austin had a post route that went for a touchdown as well. Their defense is Swiss cheese. I know they have Max Crosby in there, who's one of the best defensive linemen in the league, but he can only do so much. And then the offense is very disappointing outside of just Devonta Adams and Jacoby Myers. It's a disappointing unit. However, I had the Tennessee Titans also falling a ton, -4. As I'm going to have them move back to 28. I had them like 30 at one point after the Saints game. They're going to be in that bottom 5, bottom 10 conversation for the rest of the year. The Tennessee Titans are not a good team. I'm going to be honest with you guys. When the running game doesn't work, the entire team just collapses. Derrick Henry had like 1.9 yards per carry on 11 carries. He's 28. The wear and tear is catching up to him. He doesn't look fully there. Outside of like a few week 1 good catches out in space. On the ground, it looks like he's slowing down quite a bit, and he's not reaching that second level like he did when it was 2019 and like 2020. And when Derrick Henry's not going, your entire offense is extremely sluggish. And the defense was kind of picked apart by the Browns last game as well, which they're probably going to end up doing. Their secondary is a very rough unit. The run defense is awesome, but their secondary is a rough unit. Moving the Commanders down again as well. They got destroyed by the Buffalo Bills, but I'm not really going to blame them. It's the Bills. They manhandled the Raiders last game. They were going to beat the Commanders this game, but what I'm scared about was the Sam Howell 4 interceptions. I know that not all of them were like god-awful interceptions and all his fault, but I mean, they couldn't get anything going, and especially on offense. I mean, the reason why they're 2-1, they're the worst 2-1 team in my opinion. They faced two bad teams and had two very lucky wins. I think they're going to be hard pressed for wins once they start facing real teams, and we saw that with the Buffalo Bills. Even though the defense is good, or is a better unit, a plus unit in the NFL, is the offense going to be enough, even under Eric Bieniemy and Ron Rivera? I think that coaching is likely going to be a change over the offseason. I think we'll see that. Arizona Cardinals and the Houston Texans, my next two teams, up. Very, very, very surprised by their showing. Maybe not the Cardinals as much as a surprise. They put up 28 against the Giants in the first half. They look very good offensively. Even under Joshua Dobbs, they look pretty efficient. They look very efficient, and they look like they can easily convert first downs and be efficient in the red zone. A lot of teams are not doing that, by the way. That I'll get to later, some of the bad offensive teams. But they look pretty good on offense. Even under Joshua Dobbs, even when they lost their best player in DeAndre Hopkins last year, even when they have not the best offensive line, they're doing good. And the play action's working. James Conner is doing phenomenal. And the defense is holding on to some tight games. They played well against the Commanders. They forced a scoop and score against the Commanders, if I'm not correctly. And then they played very well against Dak Prescott. I think they forced an interception as well. So maybe Jonathan Gannon wasn't such a horrible hire. Maybe I was wrong about that. They look like they're probably going to soar over my expectations of 3 wins. And I don't think they end up with the number 1 overall pick. The way they're playing right now, they remind me of maybe even like the Lions under Dan Campbell. Remember how everybody was clowning Dan Campbell? Maybe it works. Maybe something in the locker room happened. They got some leaders in there. Maybe Jonathan Gannon has gotten to his players. And then the Houston Texans, obviously. Their offense, it finally got tapped into against the Jaguars. Listen, the Jaguars, not a great secondary at all. C.J. Stroud was able to put up a lot of air yards, and it looked very good. The offense looked very good, especially with the receiver core they have. Tank Dell had another phenomenal game. Nico Collins, Robert Woods, as well as Dameon Pierce finally getting his first touchdown of the year. C.J. Stroud had 3 touchdowns, if I'm not wrong. And then the defense, obviously, with DeMarco Ryan, played well. I would generally say they played well against the Jaguars. The Jaguars are such a firepower offense, but they had an answer for Trevor Lawrence. It had to force a lot of drops and force a lot of incompletions for them. A very good game for the Houston Texans, a team that I was a fan of over the offseason, as I think the rebuild's going pretty well as of right now. And the Indianapolis Colts, another team that's rebuilds going pretty well also. Even with Gardner Minshew, they were able to win against the Baltimore Ravens without Anthony Richardson. A defensive masterclass by them. They did allow 2 touchdowns on the ground by Lamar Jackson, but they were able to hold them to 19 points. This is a team that's had success against like the Texans, who they even beat as well. The offense looks a lot better than I expected, especially the ground game. Zach Moss had a 100-yard game as well. Overall, so that's why I'm moving them up a little bit. Buccaneers, they face a tough opponent. I'm not going to knock them. They still looked decent against the Bucs. Maybe not against the ground. It's tough with the Eagles offensive line. It's tough to defend the run against them. But against the pass, they got an interception, and they scored 1 touchdown on offense, I'm pretty sure. But that's a tough team with the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not going to blame them for losing that game, so I'm not going to move them. With the New York Giants, I'm moving them down by 3. Their offense without Saquon Barkley is pretty much dead. Him being such a big, not only like consistent safety valve out of the backfield, but also as the guy who creates the home runs on your team, it just stole their offense, and they really couldn't get anything going against the 49ers. Once again, a tough team. I'm not going to knock them too much for a game that they were going to lose, but the defense has seemingly gone down quite a bit, especially the secondary. Secondary last year under Wink Martindale was a lot better. This year, against the pass, it's allowing a lot of big plays, and their red zone defense is not looking great. Maybe, I don't know if it's because they're blitzing too much, because they blitz a ton. Maybe it's because they're blitzing too much and the ball's getting out too quickly and there are too many people open in man coverage. I don't know. They maybe have to switch to more zone plays and maybe not blitz at like 80% of the downs like they do. It worked last year, but it's not really working this year. New York Jets are going to be my biggest losers of the week, seemingly. They have no offense. I'm going to be honest with you guys. They really have no offense with Zach Wilson on the field. I mean, they're 32nd in so many major statistical categories. Like, they're 32nd in points scored by an offense. They're 32nd in total yards per game on offense, 32nd in passing yards in total and yards per game, 32nd in points per game. I mean, their offense is just inept under Zach Wilson. Look at last game. They didn't trust him at all with the ball, and I think they've had the most 3-and-outs for any team outside of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback, but if they keep Zach Wilson in here, the New York Jets free fall is going to continue. I mean, they've fallen more than any other team in my power rankings. They went from a top 10 team to a bottom 20 team, or a bottom 21 team, if you want to be exact. But the defense is still good. They held the Patriots to 13 offensive points. Of course, with the safety, that's why they won with 15. But the defense is always on the field. It's very hard for them to sustain like scoreless drives, even though they're really good in the red zone, even though they're really good at, and especially late in game, forcing really needed key third down stops. But if the coaching staff keeps on trying to trot Zach Wilson out there, we're going to have a conversation about the potential firing of some heads. I know that the season got flipped on its head with Aaron Rodgers, but you have to adapt somehow. And it's 4 games. It's almost going to be 4 games in now. And there is no adapting from the New York Jets offense, especially. I don't know if it's whether Nathaniel Hackett or if it's Zach Wilson. It's probably majority on Zach Wilson. I was watching some film on the Jets last night. Players are open. Sometimes players are open. Sometimes the blocking is not working out. But a lot of the time, Zach Wilson can make the read, but he just chooses not to, or he's just not able to. But I might make a message to Jets fans after the bye. Sorry about that extended rant about the Jets. Obviously, huge fan of them. It's tough out here. Minnesota Vikings at 20. I mean, they're a good team, but they face tough opponents, and they lose close games now. Or they've been losing close games. The defense, man, is Swiss cheese. I don't know what else to say. Brian Flores didn't help at all. And then the offensive, I guess, like, the offense is struggling a little bit too. I think that Dalvin Cook leaving kind of changes that ground game that would really help them when the passing game wasn't working. But Justin Jefferson is Justin Jefferson. The passing game is really good. But they've just had kind of bad luck with the close games, unlike last year when they went 11-0 in close games. But they're struggling right now, and I don't know how deep the slope gets. They face the Panthers next week. I think they get a bounce-back win there. But, I mean, their defense does not look good at all. The New Orleans Saints, a bit of a scare with Derek Carr going out of the game with injury, and they ended up losing that game too. But thank God he's still he didn't break his collarbone. Or have a major injury. Only an AC joint sprain. He should be back within a few weeks, maybe 2 to 3 weeks. He'll be back on the field. I'm pretty sure it was a non-throwing arm as well, which is good. That's lucky. But the Saints, man, the defense is here. The offense is like here. Even with Derek Carr, it's like, is it enough to like win a close game when you really need them to? They faced 2 bad opponents to start off, the Titans and the Panthers, 2 bottom 5 teams on my list. When they face, they could have won against the Packers. They really easily could have if Jordan Love didn't come back with that 2-minute touchdown. I'll get to them in a sec, but they are second in the NFC South. We'll see if they can keep on holding that. I don't know who they face next though. But the Rams, you lose on Monday Night Football. Again, the Bengals. It's a good team. Bengals were projected to win. But the offense didn't look as great today, especially the offensive line. They were allowing a ton of pressure to the Bengals defensive line. That's a huge issue that the Rams haven't been able to solve for the last 2 years. Matthew Stafford looks like he gets murdered out there. But the defense played pretty well overall, especially the secondary. The secondary played pretty well for the majority of the game against a tough passing offense. But Joe Burrow doesn't look great. The accuracy, that like golden boy accuracy, is not really there right now. I don't know whether it's because of his calf injury or whether it's because of something else. But the Bengals offense is still very sluggish. we'll have to have. Well, I need to see like a 30, 40 point game before I really put the Bengals back up in the top 10. Steelers, very nice win against the Las Vegas Raiders. The passing offense looked a lot better. I know that Matt Canada said that he was going to have an increased role on the offense. I don't know whether that was implemented, but something worked because the passing offense was much better and much improved. It probably is due to the Raiders having a Swiss cheese defense with a ton of holes. Kenny Pickett looked a lot better. He looked a lot poised. He wasn't trying to make like crazy plays happen or stay in the pocket too long. He's staying in pocket, stepping up, and making good throws. That's what you want to see out of him. The defense, obviously, TJ Watt is like a godsend at defensive line. And the Steelers' defense, they look good. That Minkah Fitzpatrick hit on Jimmy Garoppolo, though, probably shouldn't have been a roughing the passer. That's a routine safety blitz 2 years ago. New England Patriots, they are now 1-2. I have them at 16. I don't have them moving. Their defense is still very good, but their offense very sluggish. Throughout their offense is up and down. You see like the highs. You can see what they can kind of do. Like we saw what they do against the Eagles defense when they were really rolling. And then at some points against the Dolphins when they were really rolling. But against the Jets defense, a lot of third downs, close calls. But, the offensive play calling is still, I would say, new because Bill O'Brien, as new offensive coordinator, still getting the rust off of Mac Jones after last year. I don't know. Mac Jones didn't have it. I know it was in the rain because I was there. I was there at the game. I was at the Patriots-Jets game. The rain was affecting him a little bit. But in the run game, especially, Ramondre Stevenson didn't have a great game. But the defense was the main victor out of them as well. They created a safety even. So I'm going to keep them where they're at. I'm not going to move them down or up. They didn't give me a reason to move them down or up, technically. The Cleveland Browns, I have them going back up to 15. The thing about them is their defense is a humongous jump from last year. They just generate so much pressure, and their secondary is really good this year. But, their offense at sometimes is horrible. Deshaun Watson, I've been saying this for the longest time. He doesn't really have it all there yet. It's either he's still rusty or he just isn't the same player. Threw a horrible backwards pass, which should have been a fumble. But at times the rushing game is phenomenal. Jerome Ford had 2 touchdowns, and the defense really carried you against a bad Titans team. But I'm not going to move them any higher than 15. They need to prove that they can beat a really good team, and they've lost to the Steelers. They beat the Titans, who are a bad team, and then they beat the Bengals coming off of a Joe Burrow injury. We'll see how they perform in the next matchup. But moving on to the Packers. Very late game win against the Saints. Jordan Love really looks like an MVP. He looks like that guy. I've seen it. Aaron Rodgers. You see those Aaron Rodgers comebacks late in games. It reminded me a lot of that when I was watching the last 2 minutes of the game at MetLife Stadium on like the big jumbotron, and they got that fade ball to, I think it was Dontavius Wicks who got that last touchdown. Jordan Love looks really good. The offense, even without Aaron Jones and even without Christian Watson, at some times really does work. I know Jordan Love missed like 2 touchdowns based on like overthrows. That's the one critique I have about Jordan Love is his touch isn't quite like at that elite level. It's there. It's the potential is 100% there. He makes some really nice throws. But like that, he's open and it's barely out of his hands. It's like it needs to be there because it's a touchdown play. But, don't argue with 8 touchdowns in 3 games from a guy that's been sitting for 3 years. And then the defense is obviously a really good unit. The secondary is great. The defensive line is good against the run. And the Packers, they look like a playoff team to me. They're a top 14 team. I have them making the wild card. They're a good team. The Falcons are another guy in this conversation. Even though they did lose against the Lions are a tough team. Lions are not the same Lions anymore. Their defense is a lot better. But I do have a massive issue with the passing. The passing game is just not there. You got like the rushing game that's here. And I said this in the last video too, the last Power Rankings video. When the running game is not here and it's like here, the passing game is already here. So how are you going to go? You're not going to break out of that slump like just now. They don't quite have the talent with Desmond Ridder. whether it's a talent issue, whether Desmond Ritter just isn't good enough to command that type of offense, or whether it's because he's just been getting unlucky. The accuracy is not quite there. Interceptions they're happening, but I mean he's leading the league in turnover worthy plays according to PFF. And I watched the Bijan Robinson film, and it wasn't doing him any service either. He's not targeting the outside receivers. He rarely looks to the sidelines. And the passing game is struggling due to that. I don't know whether to put it all on, maybe Arthur Smith and coaching. He's not calling enough passing plays and getting Ritter comfortable within the game, or whether it's Ritter, he's just not talented enough. But when they're not able to hammer the rock, they will lose games, and that's what I think is their biggest inhibitor for the rest of the season, I guess. And that teams will hone in. They're really going to stack the box against this team, knowing that Desmond Ritter is not going to be the best passer going up against. It's kind of what teams do against the Jets now to stop the run with Zach Wilson. Jacksonville Jaguars, another team that's been struggling out of the gate. Their offense just isn't quite what it was at the start of last season with, the scheme and the play calling was just a bunch of slot guys running around. I feel like they're trying to put more stuff into structure instead of that freestyle, crosser nature of the playoff run that they had last year. And they're also leading the league in drops. They're leading the league in receiver drops. They're just sluggish coming out of the gate. Hopefully they can get that going. They kind of had a big loss against the Texans. Their defense has some issues, and I said this in my record predictions video. Their defense is going to lose them some games. I mean, the secondary is just not all there. The pass rushing unit at some times can be really good. At some times it's not going to be really good. And we saw that with C.J. Stroud getting enough time in the pocket and then making some really beautiful reads. The Cincinnati Bengals already touched on them a little bit. Joe Burrow had a better game. Jamar Chase finally had his big game that he's had a sluggish start to the season, so is Joe Burrow. But the defense was the real victors of this game. They were holding on until, the 2-minute warning where Tutu Atwell scored a touchdown. And they were getting a ton of pressure on Matthew Stafford, which is the biggest positive out of their game. Hopefully the wins will start rolling in for them. Moving on to the Chargers, they get their first win of the season. Their offense, man. The one sad part about the game was that Mike Williams did tear his ACL, but I mean Justin Herbert is looking like an MVP candidate, and I think he's in the top 5 conversation right now. I mean, 6 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. I think he's top 3 in passing yards per game. He put up 400 this game. Keenan Allen had another huge game. Mike Williams had a huge game, unfortunately torn ACL. Joshua Palmer had a touchdown. Who else had a touchdown? Somebody else did. But offensive showing from them. Obviously, their defense is just not a good unit. J.C. Jackson got arrested. He was a healthy scratch. Horrible contract signing, but the defense is the only thing that really scares me about their team. I think they're going to allow a ton of points throughout the entire year, and they're going to have some shootouts. And we've already seen glimpses of that in their season. But the Chargers, good team. I still have them top 10. I don't know whether they make the playoffs, though, because their defense, man, is another team with Swiss cheese secondary. But their offense is just too good, with Justin Herbert leading the pack, to not put them within the top 10 conversation based on, this team is going to win games because they're just going to score more points than the other team. The Baltimore Ravens lost a skid against the Colts. I'm not going to knock them too much because they are still the best team in the AFC North. They have the best running game, or they have the second best running game in the AFC North. I guess you could put the Browns up there, but without Nick Chubb, probably not. Passing game didn't get as going as it did in the last couple of games. They really need to hone in on Zay Flowers and get him going deep down the field more. They were without Justice Hill, the running back, and Gus Edwards didn't have a great game either. At least I'm pretty sure he didn't have a great game. But Lamar did have 2 touchdowns on the ground. And the defense was holding on up until the last couple of minutes when they gave up some key scores to the Colts. But I'm not going to knock them too much. I still think they're the best team right now in the NFC North. I'll still keep them in the top 10 conversation. Seattle, they put up 37 points against the Panthers. They put up especially Kenneth Walker. I know that Kenneth Walker's snap count is starting to dwindle because they're using Charbonnet a lot more, but I don't know why, because we saw with Kenneth Walker, he put up 2 touchdowns in that game. The passing game, though, passing game is not as fast as it was, or has not gotten off to as quick as a start as it did last year. Probably due to the fact that, the receiver, Tyler Lockett played. Yeah, Tyler Lockett played. But I don't know. JSN isn't getting as involved, and the running game is really working, so they should probably hone in on that. But the defense, not as great as they're showing against the Panthers. I know they should have won that. They know they were going to win that game, and they should have won that game. But giving up 24 points and a good amount of points or a good amount of yards through the air is a little concerning for the rest of the season. Obviously, we saw a little bit with the Detroit Lions, where they're giving up. I think they gave up 3 touchdowns to the Lions through the air. But speaking about the Lions, I'm going to them now. Really good win against the Atlanta Falcons. Jahmyr Gibbs finally got his full workload, or a good amount of workload, with 80 yards. Everything looked good. The defense looked really good, man. The defense looked a lot better, in which I like to see with them improving. Dallas Cowboys, I'm moving them down by 1. I had a few guys commenting they had the best defense in the league. Where was that against the Arizona Cardinals? Struggled the game. Obviously, the Cardinals are a lot better than they expected. I think they played down to their opponent because sometimes the Cowboys can do that. But Dak Prescott, he showed his struggles against the Cardinals. They honed in on him, sometimes making mistakes, trying to force balls in a situation that he shouldn't. But I'm not going to kill the Cowboys because they lost the game against an inferior opponent. They're still a really good defense. They proved that and they're a really good offense. They proved that against the Giants and the Jets. But I really want to see them against the 49ers and the Eagles. I need to see how the top teams can form against the top teams. Buffalo Bills, I talked to them a little bit. They're a really good offense. They're a really good defense. They're a top 15. Going to keep them, moving them up. And get them in the top 5 conversation. Not much to say about them through this game. They were overpowering the Commanders. They overpowered the Raiders. But the thing about James Cook looks very good. James Cook has been running with a lot of steam in these recent games. But for the top 4, don't kind of look at the rankings. Like the San Francisco 49ers, even though they moved down 2, like they don't really move down 2. It's just because the Miami Dolphins shot up this week, as well as the Kansas City Chiefs. But for the 49ers, advanced to 3-0. They faced 3 sluggish opponents outside of the Rams, which was their best opponent. Beat the Giants pretty handily. The passing game looks great under Brock Purdy. The defense looks great, obviously. They're the second best team in the NFC, according to me. So even though they're moved down by 2, don't worry. They're still going to be the second seed, in my opinion, in the NFC. And then the Eagles, even though they moved down 1, don't worry. Like, they're still such a phenomenal team. Had a good win against the Buccaneers. And, they're good defense. Jalen Carter looks really good. I mean, I know why he fell. People are like, oh, how did you let this guy fall? Like, yes, he fell. He was involved in like a humongous accident that involved the death of his teammate. Like, he's playing very well, but you got to understand the context behind why Jalen Carter fell, as well as the offense doing pretty well as well. Had a good game. Jalen Hurts, touchdown on the ground. DeAndre Swift looks pretty good on the ground as well. I know it's helped by such a phenomenal run blocking offensive line, but DeAndre Swift's looking like a good trade for them. Kansas City Chiefs mauled the Bears. The reason why I'm putting them up back to 2 is because their defense had a phenomenal showing against Justin Fields, and the offense. The receivers are finally catching the ball, and when the Chiefs receivers catch the ball, it's a pretty fun game for their offense. So I'm moving them back up to 2, and then I'm moving the Miami Dolphins up to number 1 because obviously they scored 70 points. Even for this week, I'll probably move them down next week, but just for the pure comedy of it, you score 70 points, you're the number 1 team in the AFC, or the number 1 team in the NFL right now, including point differential. But the thing about them is their offense looks really like they look like the best offense in the NFL. I'm not afraid to say it. Mike McDaniel, he does some really creative and crafty things. Like we see, like Alec Ingold, like a fullback playing wide receiver or lining up as the outermost receiver. We got Tyreek Hill playing at tight end and then going out on like motion. I mean, we see like behind the back pitches by Tua Tagovailoa, and Devon Achane put up 4 touchdowns. Raheem Mostert put up 2 touchdowns or something. No, I think he put up like 4 touchdowns too. I mean, he has 6 touchdowns as well. The offense is just crazy good, and the defense actually had a pretty decent showing. I know the they didn't. The game was over by the time the second half rolled around, so I don't really care about that 6 points the Broncos scored in the second half. But just for the comedy of it, I'm gonna put them at 1. But that's gonna do it for this power rankings video. Make sure you guys leave a like, comment, subscribe. I am as of recording this video 991 subs. So I'm 9 away from 10,000 subscribers. Make sure you guys follow my Twitter as well, Alex Regan NFL. I'm always active on there. And I'll see you guys in the next one.